Guys, do you remember what life was like before you lived with me? You guys didn't have treats like this to eat, and you lived outside, but now you're here and you're part of our family and you get all the good stuff. Here's a treat, Lena. Okay. So this reminds me, fourth graders, of the story we're going to read today, because we're reading about the Native nations, and we're going to learn about, sorry, my cats are making me laugh. We're going to learn about how life changed for them, just like for these cats when they came to live with me. So hold on one second while I get ready. Welcome back, fourth graders. We are going to keep reading 3 Native nations today, and we are on lesson 11, and we're going to go ahead and see what we're learning. We are learning how to use text structure to support our understanding of the text and to support our opinions. We know we are successful today when we can describe chronological order. Try and say that with me. Chronological order. Then we have to describe what happens in the story in chronological order. Then we're going to use details in the text when answering questions about the story. So you might be asking, Miss Lawson, what in the world is chronological order? Well, here it is. Let me tell you. This section is organized in chronological order. The author uses signal words that help the readers follow the events in the order that they happen. So signal words for order can include specific dates and other words like first, during, and over time. So it's in chronological order. It's just telling us how things happen. Latin roots. So we are still working on these words that we have borrowed almost from other languages like Latin. So the longhouses in 3 Native nations were made of wood construction. So we're really going to focus on this root, construct. You guys remember struct, what it means? Yeah, it means to build. So when we see this root word, it tells us that a construction is something that they built and put together. Good job, fourth graders. Now, another base word that we have is prescribe. Now, if you are prescribed something, scribe means to write. So you might be prescribed some medicine from a doctor, and that means they are writing something before, and you have to take it to the pharmacy for them to give it to you. Now, a subscription is something different. So script also means to write, but a subscription means you're writing and you're asking for something. So you might subscribe to like a magazine and say, hey, I want to get this magazine every month. So you have to write in and say, hey, I want this. So script and scribe both mean to write. So what you are doing for your foundational skill today is you're going to put the word in the correct column. There's a struct, scrib, and script column, and you have to put them in the right column based on their root word, and tell me how that helps you figure out the meaning of the word. Then you're going to choose 2 of those words and try and write them in a nice 4th grade sentence with those capital letters and punctuation. All right, vocabulary. What is this word? Try and use that skill that we just learned and sound it out. Treaty. It's a treaty. And let's look at from the story. When the new United States won the war, the terms of the treaty did not favor the Haudenosaunee people. Ooh, so I'm looking at these pictures. What do you think treaty means, 4th graders? Yeah, it's an agreement between 2 states or nations to settle a dispute or a war. So it says once the United States won the war, this is the terms of their agreement that they made. Next, a clan. We learned a little bit about this the last time we read together. It said, here's a picture of the clans, and it says long houses had a door at each end, and the clan symbol was above the door. So what's a clan, 4th graders? Yeah, good job remembering. It's a close-knit and interrelated, so they're kind of related family. It's a group of people with a strong common interest. So a colonist, these colonists are the people who lived in the first 13 colonies. So it's these people that came from Europe and formed the 13 colonies, and we are going to learn about them today. Then there is the Confederacy, an alliance, which we learned about in another lesson. So it's when they come together and work together between people who join together for a common cause or purpose. All right, let's get into this story. Get my arrow ready. Life in the longhouse. People of the longhouse lived in wooden buildings that were about 20 feet wide and tall, and about 180 to 220 feet long. The length of a longhouse was determined by how many families lived in it. The longest ever known was 400 feet long. Wow. Longhouses had a door at each end, and the clan symbol was above the door. There were no windows. Smoke holes in the roof let smoke from the shared fire pits escape. So it looks like they're talking about up here, these vents. The roof curved, and the sides and roof were covered with flattened bark. So it kind of looks like this bark. Animal hides were used to seal the sides during the winter. Inside, an aisle about 10 feet wide ran down the center of the long house. On either side were small sleeping booths for the families. In each booth was a raised platform. The family slept on the platform. So right here we kind of see what it looks like. The sleeping booths are over here. We've got the fire pit, the common hall, and the meeting area. And then those vents that we were talking about already. It says up here, the longhouses were the property of the women. A longhouse was home to the family of the head of the Owachira in the clan. When a man and woman married, the man moved into the woman's family longhouse. So that's why they said the clans are back here when it said they're interrelated families, because you're bringing in other parts of the family when they get married. The man moved into the woman's family longhouse. Longhouses are still important to the descendants of the Haudenosaunee. Many practice the longhouse religion, which combines Christianity with traditional Haudenosaunee beliefs. Their meeting places are longhouses made of logs or wood frame construction, like a house. Changes come quickly. So this is big. It says, everything changed when Europeans arrived. Like all other native nations, the Haudenosaunee suffered terribly when confronted with European diseases. Smallpox, measles, influenza, and other illnesses killed thousands. Almost as damaging, the Iroquois League became involved in European wars. France and Great Britain fought for control of the area around the Great Lakes. The Haudenosaunee at first sided with the British against the French. Many men died during the many years of war. In 1700, the Iroquois League became neutral in the conflict. They didn't want to fight anymore. They didn't pick a side. It was during this period that a related nation from the North Carolina region moved north to escape troubles with Europeans. These were the Tuscarora people. The Haudenosaunee were now 6 nations instead of 5. The Iroquois League was broken by the American Revolution. The Haudenosaunee government allowed the individual tribes to make their own choices. The Oneidas and Tuscaroras sided with the colonists. The Mohawk, Cayugas, Senecas, and Onondagas backed the British, so they split up. When the new United States won the war, the terms of the treaties did not favor the Haudenosaunee people. The tribes that had sided with the British had no land in the peace agreement. So they were like, you didn't side with us, you don't get any land. They were eventually given some reservation land in Canada. This is the Grand River Reservation, the only place where the Six Nations, another name for the Iroquois League, live together today. Okay, so this is the Iroquois League in 1722. So this is what their land used to look like. And if we see, it's part of New York and Pennsylvania. It looks like quite a bit of land. Got the Mohawks, the Oneidas, Onondagas. So they got quite a bit of land. Now let's look how it changed. Now it looks like we just have this tiny little piece in Oklahoma, this tiny little piece in Wisconsin. I'm gonna skip ahead to look. It's all these little tiny, this is present day Iroquois reservations. Look at how little land they have now. What a change. Here's what they look like now. Here's what they used to look like. What a change. Over time, there's a stop sign. It says, why did the Haudenosaunee men stop being warriors and hunters and become farmers? So back in the old chapters that we read together, or sections, we found out that they were warriors and they were hunters, but it looks like they're about to change and we have to figure out why. So over time, where did my arrow go? The United States wanted New York to be open for settlers. The government took land from the remaining Haudenosaunee and forced them to move to reservations. When this happened, everything in their society began to change. Haudenosaunee men had to become farmers rather than hunters and warriors. The nations lost their land some and were forced to move west of the Mississippi River. So it said right there when this happened. So the government took their land and forced them to move to reservations. When that happened, everything changed and they had to become farmers. The nations lost their land. Some were forced to move west of the Mississippi River. As Haudenosaunee people became farmers, they stopped living in large family groups. The men replaced women as the head of the family. Today, Haudenosaunee people live mainly in New York, Canada, and Oklahoma. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy tries to succeed in United States society, even though they struggle to hold on to their heritage. So I kind of already talked about it, but what made them change? Exactly. They took their land, they made the move to these reservations, and that changed everything for them. They had to adapt. They had to find different ways to live. Good job, guys. So we've already looked at this, how they have this little bit of land now. So a spiritual culture, from masks to sports. Haudenosaunee spirit faces. Masks are used in many cultures. The Haudenosaunee use two types of masks in their rituals. False faces are carved from wood. Husk faces are made from woven corn husk. In both cases, the faces look like spirits from the ancient stories of the Haudenosaunee. A divine gift. The modern game of lacrosse was influenced by the Haudenosaunee hundreds of years ago. It was given its name by French explorers who called the long stick used in the game lacrosse. The Haudenosaunee called it Tawarathon, which means little brother of war. Anyone who has watched a modern-day lacrosse match knows why it was given that name. It's a very intense sport. It says down here, an engraving showing the traditional Native American game of lacrosse, named so by the French settlers because of the stick's shape. So let's make sure I didn't miss anything up here. Nope. It says over here, a stick maker from the Onondaga Nation on the Onondaga Nation Reservation. So you can kind of see half the stick here and half of it up here. It's very long. So it says Haudenosaunee lacrosse teams could involve dozens or even hundreds of players. The playing field might be hundreds of yards. 91 meters, or 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers long. The game was a competition that was sometimes used to avoid conflict between clans. Whether it was played to solve problems or simply to have fun, Tawarathon was considered a divine gift. Playing it helped heal the soul, help heal the spirits of the people. Tawarathon was played with sticks that had nets at one end. These were used to throw and catch a ball or other objects. Players must not touch the ball with their hands, otherwise it was anything goes. So this is what lacrosse looks like today. So it's funny because we have that old picture here. This is what it looked like. This is an engraving of how they used to play, and this is what it looks like now. Although the game of lacrosse is considered sacred by the Haudenosaunee, it is also a lot of fun. Pretty cool. So something that we need to think about. What caused the family structure of the Haudenosaunee to change after the war? So let's look back. It says right here, they lost their land and they moved. They stopped living in large family groups, which is something they used to do. And then here is the big change. The men replaced women as head of the family. So because they lost their land and they were moved, that caused them to not live together as one. And then that made the man take over for the woman. So if we look back, did we answer the question, what caused the structure to change? It was losing the land and moving after the war. Okay, so now we are going to figure out this question together. How would you compare life for the Haudenosaunee before the Europeans came and after? And this is why I started off the video talking with Kane and Lena about their life before I got them and after, because it's not similar to this, but when the Europeans came, it completely changed the life of the Haudenosaunee people. Just kind of like when I got Kane and Lena, it completely changed their life. But let's see if it was for the better for the Haudenosaunee people. First, let's talk about how did they live before? They had a group of 5 and then 6 different groups of people living together. It's a lot of different people working together. Was it going well? Yeah, they lived in peace. That was a big thing that made them successful, that all those groups came together and they lived peacefully. Now, who was the head of the family that we just talked about before the Europeans got there? Do you remember? Yeah, the women. The women were the head of the family before, and now they're not. The last big change is, what were the men? What did they used to do, and what do they do now? Yeah, we just talked about it. They used to be hunters, but then they had to change, and they used to be warriors too. I should have added that in there. And 4th graders, thank you so much for those of you that went and got your piece of paper and your pencil, and you're making this with me. I appreciate that I didn't even have to say it. You guys are rocking it. Great job. Now, let's talk about what happened after the Europeans arrived. Were they still living peacefully? Let's look back. It said everything changed right here. So it says it was during the period that a related nation moved. So they were still all together here. But this is where the change happens. It says the Iroquois League was broken by the revolution. The government allowed the tribes to make their own choice. These 2 tribes picked the colonists, and then the other 3 backed the British. So they're both fighting on different sides of the war. So that's not going very well. They're divided. So they used to live peacefully, and now they're divided. Oh, I went one ahead. It divided the nations between those 2 sides of the war. So that was sad. This group that lived peacefully for such a long time. Then, as we just talked about, we've already spent today talking about it a lot. Men are now the heads of the families. The women aren't in charge anymore. And we've already talked about this too. They became farmers. So a lot has changed. And did it change them for the better? What do you think? Yeah, I don't think it did. It broke them up and it made things harder for them. So here is your task for your reading response today, fourth graders. You are going to reread the text about the events involving the American Revolution on page 12. So this page right here, reread it. Then you're going to tell me, how did the revolution impact the Haudenosaunee people? How did it change them? And this is where you can tell me, do you think it made it better for them or worse? And why? Because remember, we're really focusing on you making your own opinion and your own inferences from the text. You guys did an amazing job today. You always impress me so much. Can't wait to see you next time. Bye, fourth graders.